Now we're good to go. Well, welcome back for session 3 of our 4-part series. Hopefully everyone got the emails from last week, and that was about as clear as mud as usual around here for different things. This week we're going to break it down a little bit more and talk about the invasives that we'll find in the landscape. So let me swap my screens here. Hold on. All right. So invasive species in the home landscape, we're talking more than just insects, right? So what are the invasive species? We know that we have insects, we have diseases, we have mammals, we have a little bit of everything, and they cause harm. They could cause harm to our health. They could cause harm to the ecosystem. There could be a financial harm. Lots of different things for those invasives. Okay. Here is an example or examples of some common ones. So the Asian lady beetle, which is really more of a nuisance than anything else. We have the emerald ash borer, feral hogs. We've got garlic mustard, Asian carp, mute swan, Eurasian watermill pole, and brown marmorated stink bug. So pretty common ones that we hear about frequently.
Do they have feral hogs around here?
We do.
We do?
Yep, up around Orange County in the Paoli area.
And Henry County in Kentucky,
Yeah.
really bad in Henry County.
Yeah. They occasionally go out and do some hunts and stuff. I have a few friends that go and hunt the feral hogs.
I was thinking that it's out west or something.
Yeah, no, a lot of them down south too.
Down south, yeah.
Yeah, down south, there's a lot of them. But yeah, we do have them. Just another fun thing you found out about Indiana. We have feral hogs. So why do we care? Well, we've kind of talked about this the last couple of times. They outcompete the native species. They kill our native plants, partly. Sometimes they actually do kill them if it's a disease or an insect. They reduce wildlife habitat. They alter the ecosystem. They also increase costs and increase in diseases. And here is our invasion curve. So down here in the green section is when it's first being introduced, and we may not actually see it come in during this lag phase. It's about midway through that we start to see detection. So it could, the insect, disease, plant, what have you, could be in the area for many years before we hit the detection phase. And kind of once we hit detection, it's almost maybe too late for a widespread control, okay? So when the organism is first introduced, there are low numbers and controlling them is really easy. And it would have the lower cost. So think about the more things that you have to control, the higher the cost. Usually public awareness begins once we kind of hit that detection point. So in here we start to see the public awareness kind of, we might start to hear it depending on what it is, especially if it's like, the Asian longhorn beetle, and we heard, oh, it's going to attack all of our maples. It was pretty quick to get public awareness, and then it kind of faded away, even though it's still a very prevalent problem. So here's where we can see that once we go to red and we hit the carrying capacity, we're up to local control and management. So we're better off if we can hit that green phase, but more than likely we'll never catch it in the green phase. So the example would be emerald ash borer, and it was actually, they think, was introduced in the late 1980s. But was not actually detected until 2002 in Michigan. So it was around for about 22 years before anyone ever realized it. And again, it was introduced, they think, from shipping materials from overseas, because it is from the Asian countries. And so what it would look like, these are our old kits for emerald ash borer.
Trees too, don't
They have a pecking order though, like there's multiple different native ashes, and they prefer those, so you can kind of see on this the different markings and stuff. If you want, made this down. I think I actually have the little guy. Yeah. So if you want to pass that around, that's what it actually, there's no, that's not a bad photo, but you know, that's
Is
what
the
it
damage
actually,
done by the insect or the larva, or the adult or
the larva.
the?
So all the tunneling, that's it feeding.
It's way out.
Yeah.
What
They look
controls,
behind telltale signs on the bark that look like a D.
Yeah.
Their exit hole, when the larva comes out through the bark, it looks like a D,
Yeah.
letter D.
A large
What
capital
D?
D, the large D. You can actually see it. Not on that one. One of these you're supposed to be able to see it on, but these are so old now. Yeah, these aren't good ones to see it on, but yeah, it'll look like a D. So yeah, this is one of those that, again, had it been detected early, maybe we could have saved some stuff.
what controls the emerald ash borer in Asia?
There's, well, I think there's a couple different things. I mean, it has a native predator over there.
That's what I'm curious what that is.
It's got to be some type of bird or something, I would say, because it's an insect.
It
So,
may have even been like a wasp.
yeah, so another insect or a bird would have been its natural predator. Because of it being an insect, I mean, the only other thing, I mean, I guess
Could
there's
be like a fungal or enzyme thing that the tree can do.
that I'm not sure about. But whatever, I mean, whatever helps control it in Asia, just our stuff doesn't have the ability to control it.
Maybe they don't have ash trees.
Well, but they do, because that's where it came from. It's just their ash trees, like, oh, we'll get into a couple other examples of where we had things in other countries, those trees have defense mechanisms, but here they don't because they've never been exposed to it. And for us, we don't have that insect or wildlife that would consume the emerald ash borer to keep its population in check. So,
I probably don't want it.
well, and that's the other thing, if you're looking at doing biological control and you're bringing in a biological control from another country, will it turn into what that invasive species was? So,
Chickens on Kauai.
yeah, so it's kind of hard to bring in that natural predator because it could be even worse than what we already have. All right, so then we have Dutch elm disease, oh, sorry, threat to human health. My slides look a little bit different. So this one is Japanese barberry. And it starts to take over native areas. It increases the moisture habitat. And that habitat increases mice and ticks. So when we have increase in mice and ticks, we have increase in Lyme disease. All right. And so we really would probably prefer to keep that Japanese barberry under control since none of us really enjoyed picking the ticks off of us. I have a friend whose son already had a tick on him this year. Yeah, yeah. So if we can reduce the Japanese barberry population, we can kind of start to eliminate and control the habitats for the mice and the ticks. Oh, here you go. Travis put in here, parasitic wasp killed the boars in Asia. So yeah, it was a parasitic wasp in Asia. All right. Our next one. Maybe if my computer thinks about it. There we go. So Dutch elm disease, again, from Asia, and it attacks the vascular system. So this one, it causes the xylem to plug up and it can't get water anymore. Okay. And it's spread by the rootgrass and by beetles, and there is resistance to it. So although it's known as Dutch elm disease, it is from Asia, but was described by Dutch scientists, and that's why it is the Dutch elm disease. The elm trees were popular street trees because of their arching branches and stuff. And the disease was introduced in the 1930s to the US. Our native elms have no resistance to it, and it quickly spreads, and therefore that's why we have an issue. They are working on trying to get not resistance, but things that can withstand some of that. But again, it's kind of like the chestnut, you know, chestnuts got wiped out, you had to work on getting a new strain in here. So they're still working on it. And there have been some fungicide treatments that do help as well.
Are there elm trees around here or are they already all gone?
There's still
There
some
are
here,
some.
yeah,
There's still some around.
There's some on their phone.
yeah. So it's not like it did a complete and total wipeout, because you gotta think it's how it's spreading is either by that beetle or by the root graft. So if they're kind of maybe in a secluded area where there's not that beetle helping transfer it.
It just seems like if it had since the 1930s, it would have already,
Yeah,
the ash borer. I don't know of anywhere that the ash trees are still
right,
going. Some are alive still, but not.
right. They're hanging on, but they're
Yeah.
not, yeah. Yeah, so that's kind of where we're at. We are going to, we're skipping this activity because the instructions were not in the guide like they were supposed to be. Again, this is our second pilot for this program because of other ones going on right now, and there's a little faux pas in this. So the Indiana Treasure Plan rule, which we talked about, these are just some of the ones that we're looking at. The barberry, bittersweet, crown vetch, which again is still used. We have a whole bunch of it in the back pond back there for erosion control. Not our fault. That's what they planted to help keep the erosion at bay for the pond. So we've been trying to work on it, but haven't got that far yet. Autumn olive, winter creeper, mile a minute vine, Japanese knotweed. So several of these, again, this was started in April of 2022. I sent you all the link last week or on Friday. So you should all have this. If you don't, well, let me know. So some of our invasive shrubs, we're going to break this down. Here is the Asian bush honeysuckles. There's multiple varieties that you could have. They are multi-stemmed and 6 to 12 feet tall. Okay, so this would be the berry or the fruit set that we're looking for, that bright red berry. And you can see where that would be really attractive to some birds if they're looking for food, which also helps increase the spread of those bushes. Okay. It was originally introduced as a landscaping plant, as were most of these invasive shrubs. Someone thought they were pretty. They made a faux pas. Maybe they weren't as good as they should have been. So our identification is that it can grow to be a really large bush. Some of the branches could be up to 15 feet tall. It has opposite elliptical leaves that are 2 to 3 inches long. So if you were to measure these, they're 2 to 3 inches. Okay. It has white, yellow, or pink flowers. They have clusters of red berries that form next to the leaves, and it stays green late into the fall. So when we're talking about invasive plants, they either start to green up really early in the spring, or they stay green really late into the fall. That's how we can identify them. And they're a threat to our natives because they shade them out and decrease the habitat. And last time you'd asked about, oh, how do we control it? I went ahead and printed out the spray control guides for you all on that sheet from the SICM. And we'll give it to you at the end. It's color coded how to, basil bark cut it and what chemicals to use and what time of year to spray it. The next one is multiflora rose. All right, we're looking at was used as a living fence, maybe some erosion control, again, native to Asia. Its identification is the alternate compound leaves that it has. So each of these is a leaflet. The leaf is on the main stem. So think about leaf versus leaflet. They have finely toothed margins. The stipules are very feathery. So where it attaches, you can kind of see some featheriness. I don't think it's really a word, but how this looks kind of feathery. That is an indication that that's multiflora rose. And branches are green or red and have paired thorns. So watch out for them, just like other roses. They can.
Sorry, you said the branches are green? All the branches are green, right?
Or
And the
red.
flowers are red or white or pink?
They're mainly this white.
Oh, what are we seeing up on the upper left? That's like,
That's the fruit.
Oh, the
That's a
fruit,
fruit.
okay.
They're the rose. It's called rose hips. So that's, in the winter, you'll see that, which our other roses get them too. They're coming for all roses, but that's how there's that red color. The flowers are that white. They're a threat mainly found in old pastures. So this isn't typically one you would find maybe like in a ditch or whatever. My neighbor has one growing in our fence line. I'm not sure why he won't take it out, but it might get whacked every once in a while when it starts to go through the fence. But it disrupts the wildlife habitat. The control for this is mechanical. So you can do a foliar, basal bark, or cut stump spraying on it. So you have 3 options for that. Due to the thorny thickets, it might be difficult to get access to the stems for cutting stump or basal bark treatments. So depending on the size of it, it may be easier to try with the foliar spray first, see if you can't knock it back, and then maybe cut some of those branches away to really get at the base to treat the root system. Autumn olive, which is a shame that this one is invasive. It is really pretty. When those leaves flip over, they have a nice silvery color to them. It is very pretty, but native to Asia again. It was planted for wildlife habitat and for improving soil. So it is identified as a large bush that can grow up to 20 feet tall. And it has simple alternate leaves that are 2 to 3 inches long. It has fruit that ripens in the fall as like a red berry. So I don't have any on here, but like a little red berry on it. Okay. The plant needs full sun, so it's often found in old fields and forest edges. Any questions about autumn olive?
What does it mean by nitro fixing?
So that means that it fixes nitrogen like a soybean does. So soybeans are nitrogen fixers.
So that's not necessarily a bad thing, though.
That's why it was introduced as a soil to help improve soil, because it adds nitrogen to the soil, and our nitrogen is a very mobile element. So they thought, oh, okay, well, then we don't have to add nitrogen, and then, oops, it went out of control.
Yeah, I get it. I just thought those were all like bad things about it, so I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah, nope, it's not necessarily a bad thing. That's why it was placed here, and yeah.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Yep. The next one is our all's favorite burning bush. Yeah, lots of seeds. This is winged burning bush. It's usually how it's described. It's identified as simple opposite leaves with finely toothed margins, and they are up to 3 inches in length. The twigs start out green and then turn brown with age, and it has the corky growth on the twigs, which is in this bottom photo down here, is why we call it winged, because that corky brown growth makes it look like it has wings on it. Okay. And the threat is it can create heavy shade, which will push out natives and reduce habitat for some wildlife. Our next one is the blunt-leaved privet. Again, a lot of these, if you notice, all have lots of seeds. This is why they start to take over, because they have tons of seeds. So this is a native of Japan and was planted in the US since the 1800s, and it's often used for hedges in the landscape. The bush has small opposite leaves and has a terminal cluster of white flowers. So the terminal cluster being that it's on the tip of the branch. Okay. When it flowers in the spring, they have a very unpleasant odor. Has bluish black berries that ripen in the fall. The bark is smooth and gray, and it tends to have an upright growth pattern. So the fruit is not preferred by wildlife. So even though it might have a lot of fruit set on it, the wildlife don't like to eat it. So it doesn't help with their habitat. All right, Japanese barberry. Not one you want to mess with. It also can get you if you're not paying attention. So native to Asia, widely used in landscaping, as we know, has simple alternate leaves up to 1 inch long and somewhat oval or spoon shaped. Some cultivars have red leaves and has small red berries that persist through the winter. Okay. Doesn't provide a lot of wildlife food, so it's really not, even though it might have some berries, wildlife aren't getting to it. And again, shown to improve tick habitat.
Do the ticks live on it, or they eat it, or?
Underneath it, so think about if it's a really thick bush with a lot of stickers, and the ticks are kind of thriving with the mice. If nothing can get to the mice, then nothing can get to the ticks to consume the ticks.
So it's a mouse habitat.
Yeah.
That's the big tick habitat.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
So are they deer ticks or the small ticks or what, any ticks?
any ticks. So what you call like a deer tick may actually, that's the issue with ticks. There's really not a deer tick. It's like American dog tick, a brown tick, and a black tick, I think, are those, or Lone Star tick. Lone Star tick is the one that, other one. So it's what some people call deer tick or turkey tick. Those are all just regionality names given to the different ones or the different instars of it versus what they actually are. It's fun. Common buckthorn is our next one. So you can see it has a real distinctive bark. It was introduced as an ornamental shrub or small tree. It has opposite to sub-opposite leaves that are about 2 inches long, and they're ovate to elliptical. And the twigs are usually tipped with a dull pointed thorn. Again, not something you would want to walk into, might hurt. Has black berries that stay on the branches throughout the winter. The blade is flaky, if I can get that out. That was not what was going to come out. The bark does flake a little bit. You can see that in this photo. The threat is very invasive further north, so not maybe here, but maybe farther up in the northern, Michigan area and stuff is where it's probably more invasive. Produces a lot of seeds and outcompetes many native plants. It is also an alternate host for soybean aphids. So not something you want to see around your soybean fields. So if we're thinking about some native alternatives, we could look at chokeberry, winterberry, which is very similar to, it's a holly, looks like a holly. We have New Jersey tea. We have a couple of different dogwood options. We've got sweet spire, spice bush. They're all really good pollinator plants too. Sumac, no one ever thinks about sumac. If you're looking for an erosion control, just throw some sumac out there. It'll hold the soil in place. It's not going to go anywhere.
Has anybody been to the, there's a garden in Chicago at Grant Park that has this playground with tons of huge sumac that has grown, and it's like totally beautiful.
No, I'm not, didn't realize anybody had done that.
They've kept it, like they trim it. So,
Yeah.
I don't know, I was really impressed.
Well, and the sumac, people tend to call me and say they have like tree of heaven, which we'll talk about again tonight. Like, no, I don't think so. Because all they see is the leaf with the leaflets on it and go, oh my gosh, that's tree of heaven. I'm like, no, just because there's multiple branches doesn't mean it's tree of heaven. Yes.
What are your thoughts on Rus aromatica cultivar Rolo?
You guys, I don't know a lot about it.
Okay, we planted it about 30 years ago on a slope
Uh-huh.
where it was really difficult to cut the grass.
Right?
It looked awesome. I mean, gorgeous fall color. It's a almost bulletproof plant.
Uh-huh.
Produces berries that the local birds, including waterfowl, enjoyed. The baby Canada geese would hang out in it.
Oh, nice.
But the downside is it doesn't live very long. It lives maybe 30 years or so.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're replanting, but what I was really getting at is, do you see a downside in using a cultivar versus the species?
Nope. Because there's a lot of cultivars in the market for that reason, because we're a society that likes variation. And so, as long as you don't see where the cultivar is getting out of control, or they come back and say it's not out of control, because Bradford pear would be one of those instances where, oops, we thought we did a good thing and it wasn't, but I haven't heard that with the sumacs at all.
Yeah, it just grows much lower than the species.
Mm-hmm,
And so it was good for that usage.
yeah,
I bought a 9-bark thinking that it was a purple 9-bark.
Uh-huh.
And I've been told now that if they have a color that's different from the native, that the insects are not as attracted to it. So I was gonna dig it out and find it.
it doesn't have to do with the leaf color. It always has to do with the flower. So
Well, I think the flower, well,
I have no issue with my 9-bark. I have a wine colored 9-bark.
you have insects on it.
Uh-huh.
Larval forms and,
Not necessarily larval forms, but they like to go and pollinate it.
well, I understand that, but I'm more interested in making sure that I have the whole range because
Yeah, and you
if I
can,
don't support the larval forms, what good is it to support? the
right,
larval
yeah, and you can get some of the native ones. So the native ones are green, the leaves are
forms?
green.
Right,
Several of the cultivars, sometimes they'll throw back to the parent. So I have this wine colored one and there's 2 sets of leaves that go back to like, not even full green. They can't commit. They're like, are we wine? Are we native green? Are we wine? And they can't, every year they can't commit. But yeah, so if you could always do a mix, so you could go and still get some natives. So if you wanted that pop of color from the cultivar, you could still have that in the leaves and then plant some other natives, which is what I've done too.
I just don't have very much space.
Yeah. So that's,
If I dig it up, I'll give it to you.
okay. I have both, so, but my natives are still very small because they came from the state tree nursery. So when you get some from the state tree nursery, they're very small, so it takes them a couple of years to get caught up. But yeah. That's, and thinking about, if you're thinking about cultivars and stuff, lots of people like daylilies. We like to buy, or coneflowers that have, these iridescent colors. This is where the cultivars come into play. They've been bred so much for the colors that they don't have enough pollen and nectar to support other life. That's why it's better to go native, but again, depending on the situation, cultivars can work just as well.
Are there cultivars of the winterberry? I mean, because at my old house, I had great huge ones, but now I don't have room for great huge ones. Are there smaller?
I believe there aren't too many things out there that there's not a dwarf variety of anymore. So, I mean, I think they got smart and realized that there were lots of people living in the city that wanted to have those same natives and couldn't afford the space of having a 20-foot shrub.
Right.
So, yeah. All right, we're gonna move on to our invasive vines.
Can you go back one? Sorry,
Go for it.
so the 6th one on the list is northern bush honeysuckle. So does that one resemble bad bush honeysuckles? Like,
It would be close, but there would be distinct differences. And since I don't know what the northern bush honeysuckle looks identical, like exactly like, I couldn't tell you for sure. I'm sure it has to do with the leaf arrangement.
I'm just wondering if I'm on a honeysuckle eradication tear,
Let's see here.
do I need to be careful?
Well, see, lucky for you, I have my phone, so we'll just do this
I'll
quick little.
I'll look it up. That's-
Oh, it's cool. I've got northern bush honeysuckle. It's cool. I'm a quick typer. Here we go. So it looks, well, I guess from the first photo, to me, it looks more like a lantana, because the flowers are more like a yellow or a pink. The leaves, you can tell, are different though. So they have a bit of a red coloration in that main vein.
Okay.
Yeah. So at least that's what the federal government tells me. So that's what we'll go with. So our invasive vines, Japanese honeysuckle. Okay, as you can imagine, it's native to Asia and was planted for wildlife habitat and erosion control. The twining vine can grow up to 50 feet or more into treetops. It has opposite leaves that are semi-evergreen. They are 2 to 3 inches long and smooth margins. The flowers are white to yellowish and it has black berries on it. at the leaf axils. So think about if this thing is growing up the trees and stuff, it's going to cover the trees and shrubs and eventually kill them. It is a bigger problem in the southern part of Indiana. So we have a bigger problem with this versus our counterparts up north. In control, due to its growth habitat, mechanical treatment of cutting and mowing combined with foliar applications is the most effective control. So we're going to cut it and treat it with spray. Okay. You look very confused by that.
I have no idea how to spell that word. I'm gonna look it up.
Which one?
Foliar?
Foliar, F-O, yeah. So it's spraying the leaves,
Foliage.
foliage, yeah.
That's what I figured.
Yeah, go with foliage, yeah. We're just spraying the leaves on it.
Has anybody done a big Japanese honeysuckle project in here? I've got, my neighbor's property has some that
Oh,
I'd be
yeah.
happy to work on, but it's like,
I remember you talking about that neighbor. You just kind of, is that the same one you just?
so I
kinda-
have two, it's both neighbors on either
Uh-huh.
side. Well, I like doing this stuff, but it's just such a tangly mess, like it's very hard to
Mhm.
figure out what you're doing.
So my question is, if you are, if you're willing to get in there and mess with the tangly mess and you pull up all the greenery, you have all that debris that's got flowers or potentially berries on it, what do you do with that?
Landfill.
But then we'll keep it from just going to the landfill.
Well, you'd hope there'd be enough other stuff to keep light and things from getting to it eventually. You would hope. Like,
Because it was
It
best
would
freezing
biodegrade
in the
before it
landfill,
would-
probably.
yeah.
Produce.
I mean, you could try to burn it, but Floyd and Clark counties are always under burn bans. Doesn't stop anyone from burning, but technically, because of our location to Louisville, we are always under a burn ban.
Is that generally for forest fire risk or air quality?
Air quality. Obviously, they know it doesn't stop people, because if you like watch on windy days, they're like, hey, please don't try to do any open burning today. Like, they know they can't stop it, and most people, it's not like they don't care. But it was never something I thought about until someone said something to me, and we're only allowed to legally burn for agriculture use, recreational, and sacrificial.
Road clearing. You're allowed to do it for that.
Which is agricultural.
Okay.
Yeah, they'd consider that an agricultural use, but
They
Yeah.
say too many things are agricultural.
yeah, yeah. So those are only three: is agriculture, recreational, sacrificial. So I guess if you would decide you were gonna have like a weenie roast or something like that, you could totally throw them on the fire or call it sacrificial, that you're sacrificing the invasive plants to help the natives thrive. I don't know, you can play that however you want.
Well, if we start a fire, as long as we invite the fire chief, the neighbor over to have a beer, he's gonna be fine.
See, there you go. Just make friends and let people be aware. It's fine. The next one is Oriental Bittersweet. So this one is actually problematic in terms of people will want to go harvest it to use in their fall and winter containers because the berries stay on the vines. I know this from experience, when I used to work in the landscaping industry, and they'd go harvest it and bring it back for us to use on the client's things. Well, guess what's going to eat it? The birds. And then they're going to take the seeds and go somewhere else. We do have a native version of bittersweet, and it has to do with the arrangement of where the berries are at on it. I've only ever had one encounter with a native, and I second guess myself as to whether it was native or Oriental bittersweet. So again, from East Asia, it has leaves that are up to 5 inches long. They're finely toothed margins. The upper surface is glossy and smooth. The orange fruit will split open to reveal that reddish orange berry that you can see in the bottom photo. It is known as kudzu of the north. So think about how it's growing. Kudzu of the north. It can quickly climb and suffocate trees, and the birds spread the seed readily, and the vines root very well. So the vines can root quite easily. The control method is hand pulling small plants or doing a basal bark or cut stump on large vines. You can also use foliar spray on smaller vines on the ground. So lots of different control methods here.
Is all of this info on the handout that you got back?
I'll do what I did last week where I make this a PDF copy for you. And And this one I'll probably, because there's lots of notes on how to control it, I'll scan in the notes section because you didn't have that the last time when I make it a PDF. There's no good way to like save it. So I have to print it, scan it back to myself and save it. But I will make sure that you have the notes section for this one because we do talk about the control
You're
options.
using a term I'm not familiar with, basil bark.
It's spraying it towards the bottom of the plant. At the basal bottom part of the plant.
Okay.
Yep. But the sheet we have will talk about basil bark spraying. Our next one is mile a minute vine. So it's an annual vine and it is native to East Asia and was accidentally introduced to North America. So unlike some of the other shrubs that were purposely brought over, this one was an accident. And it can grow as much as 6 inches a day and reaches heights of more than 25 feet in a season. That's why it's mile a minute. It has simple alternate triangular leaves, and the underside of the leaves are armed with small, stiff, recurved barbs. So if you were to brush up against it, the underside of it, it would stick to you, which is no fun. It has a small cup or saucer-shaped leaf structure encircling the stem at each node, and it has small flowers that develop into clusters of blue fruits. So the seeds can stay viable for 5 years in the soil, which is also a problem. So it's an annual, so it's going to die every winter, but the seeds for it are going to live in the soil for up to 5 years. So low mowing can prevent the seed production of the plant, and using herbicides to spray the leaves will help control it. Okay. Kudzu. Yay. Another favorite, this one's a perennial vine. It's native to Asia and was planted in the US as erosion prevention. It has alternate trifoliate compound leaves. So trifoliate means that there's 3 leaflets that make up that leaf. It has clusters of pinkish purple flowers. All right, and the pods turn into pea-like seeds. The twigs are brown and covered in hairs.
Is it a legume?
I don't believe it is, no. I say that, but don't hold me to
Or
that.
just the flower?
Yeah, because it looks very similar to like a soybean or something like that. Yep, I could see that. Let's see here. So it's quickly growing. Yeah, go ahead, Travis.
Does it work for soil erosion control?
No.
So that's what it was planted for, but what happens is it grows so quickly that it takes over and literally smothers everything else. So if you drive down through Georgia and stuff, all you see in the treetops is kudzu.
Yeah, but so does it actually do erosion control though?
No, because you don't want, I mean, I guess it could in some areas, but you wouldn't want it to anymore, because then how would you control it?
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah, because if you're planting it on a slope and it's growing up the slope, I mean, you're kind of, you need it. Yeah, the slope's going to take it and then it's going to creep on up and not going to be able to control it after that.
Yeah, the gorge is covered in it.
Right, yeah.
You can see it on 135 south of Cordon as you approach the bridge across the Ohio River. It's
Yeah.
all-
Yep, there's a spot or two in Floyd County.
is that-
Yep, there's just a couple spots in Floyd County of kudzu.
I
Are
just
they-
Googled it, it is.
It is legume. See, there you go.
I'm back here now. Just what?
Yeah, so it is.
Kudzu is in the, it belongs to the legume family.
Okay,
Yeah, so it is a legume.
because I thought that there was like, at one time, there was like a movement to eat it or to prepare it as a food, you know. because it-
Go.
The beans.
I don't think we can
No,
eat it fast enough to kill it.
well, I think eating the leaves or something, I can't
Yeah, so
remember.
I think I've heard that you can turn the leaves into some sort of salad or.
Sort of like a green,
Okay.
Yeah.
See, I learned something
but
now.
I don't think people can eat it fast enough to.
Yeah, I don't think we're
Unless we
gonna,
start harvesting it and selling it back.
yeah, so,
Unleash the goats.
well, the sheep would probably eat it better. Goats are kind of picky. And so using sheep, they're working on doing some, like Harrison County's been taking sheep out to do some invasive species control in the county. And there's some other counties and states that are looking at using sheep instead of goats. Goats just get picky and then they get lazy. my parents have pygmy goats and they would prefer the grass be mowed before they ever eat it, so. You know, so you can use mowing to help control it, but herbicides are needed to actually kill the plant. And because we do have some spots at kudzu, there are occasionally professors from campus that will call us and say, hey, do you have a couple of soybean fields that we can scout because we're looking for the kudzu bug? So they're trying to figure out and track it based on soybean planting and kudzu location.
But what's the kudzu bug and does it come from kudzu or what's the?
They have the bug, the kudzu and the soybean have a relationship going on. So the kudzu bug can live in the soybeans and then it also lives with the kudzu.
And they're worried about the bug for the soybean economy.
Yeah, because it can live in the soybeans, so they want to see the kudzu populations that are next to soybean fields and stuff. Yeah. Although they haven't tracked it in a couple of years, and I think they just kind of gave up. I won't say they gave up on it, but I think they decided that kudzu wasn't moving quite as rapidly north as they had anticipated it might. But I haven't got calls in a couple of years. I usually got a call almost every year saying, hey, I need a couple of fields to go scout, and that hasn't happened recently. The next one, common periwinkle. Yeah, that's a very popular landscape plant. Yeah, it's a big no-no now. So native to Europe and is common as an ornamental ground cover. Has small opposite leaves that are shiny and smooth. The leaves are evergreen, which is again why people liked it because it adds a pop of color in our drab, dull months when we don't have a lot of color out there. Has those small lavender colored flowers and it spreads vegetatively and can form dense mats. So it can't escape to the woods, which is why it's problematic because it can really cover up the whole floor of the woods and it will exclude native plants at that point when it creates that dense mat. Another common one, winter creeper. Yeah, no fun. This one's native to East Asia. We know it as having semi-evergreen opposite leaves that are leathery, have a leather texture to them. Gosh, it's a Monday. Man, the upper leaf is dark green. The fruits are red, but only produced when the vines climb trees and they can get large with dark brown scaly bark. Okay. So this would be when I go to site visits and I see this tree covered in the vines are like, well, can't I save my tree? I'm like, at this point, not so much because there's probably a lot of rot happening here because the vine's keeping a lot of moisture right next to the bark. So there's probably a lot of unseen rot happening on that tree.
So what do you do? I mean, it seems like you would want to try to kill the vine because it's going to be reproducing anyway.
At this point, depending on what the top of that tree looks like, the vine may be the only thing holding the tree together and keeping it from falling. So if they're okay with losing the tree, they could take out both, but they would do a lot of damage just trying to kill. At this stage, trying to kill that vine, probably a lot more damage would be done than good.
I don't understand what you're saying.
Because this is rooted into the tree.
Right,
But
but so
so
you're,
dead, if the tree is all but dead, why not just kill the vine and?
Yes, you could, but there, in a lot of instances, the tree is still showing some life. So
right,
people don't want to take it down.
okay, so can I just cut the vine and treat it?
I don't think you can do it without doing more damage to the tree.
By cutting the root around the base of the.
Because they'll have fused together. I've seen a lot of them where they
Yeah.
fuse together with the bark and stuff have fused together.
You have to catch it early.
Yeah, you have to catch it really early.
I'm very confused by this. It's better to let it continue to kill the tree.
No,
Tree's dead.
Yeah,
you'd have to take them both out.
To get to this point in their history.
Yeah,
You could try to take the vine out and leave the tree, but the likelihood is you're gonna kill the tree anyway.
yeah.
Because the vine has already damaged the tree so much.
you mean,
So you might. as well
I'm not
take
gonna
it
kill
out.
the tree. The tree is already on its way
Yeah.
out.
Yes.
Yeah,
This
so
is-
take it
yeah.
out and plant something new.
So the problem is when it grows up the tree,
Uh-huh.
if you can keep, if you had a vine that happened to be around and you kept it off the tree.
If you kept it off the tree, then you're fine. But this is also adding a ton of weight to it too.
Right.
So as it's growing up in the top of the branches, those branches aren't super sturdy. They'll start to fall down. but depending on how large this is, it's woody and they'll fuse together. So if you go to try to cut it and spray along the tree, there's a potential that you'll spray the tree also. Yes.
I want to backtrack, if you don't mind, when you get a chance, to Vinca.
Uh-huh.
If you have a fairly extensive spread of Vinca,
Uh-huh.
what's the best way to get rid of it?
Start controlling it in small patches.
Well, if it's beyond that point, then
Large patches, then like, what I would say is like, if you had a large area, I would try to quadrant it off and start with one spot, eradicate it there, replant with something native, and then work your way around the
How do you
quadrants.
eradicate it?
Yeah.
How do you?
Oh, spray. You can spray it. Yeah.
But when it's
I
such
guess
glossy
maybe
leaves,
you call on her, so you're talking about trying to do that within a couple seasons or one season?
Yeah, it definitely would take you more than one season to do
so
all
what
that.
do you do about those glossy leaves? I've had trouble with, getting.
So you have to buy what's called a surfactant,
Right.
and it helps it stick to the leaves.
what was that again?
Surfactant.
Right.
A surfactant is a type of chemical,
Yeah.
and it helps herbicides stick to leaves that have gassy leaves.
In my experience, it also with periwinkle, it takes a long time to tell whether you killed it or not. It's just sort of like it's dead, but it's just still green because it's
Yeah.
like sealed up in a little.
Yeah, so it'd definitely be like a large patch would definitely be multiple seasons of trying to work that quadrant and control it, because you would still have to go back to the original quadrant that you started with and grab whatever's left, but you'd have to hand pull that, because if you go to spray, it's a plant, and any herbicide you spray will kill any plant. Because it's a broadleaf. So if you use a broadleaf weed killer, it would kill both the periwinkle and the native plants.
Anything that's planted around it.
Yeah.
Yep, that's a broadleaf. Now, if you were to go in and plant like a grass, then you could use a broadleaf killer that was meant just for broadleaves and not grass, and leave the grass. It's confusing, isn't it? It's a lot to take in.
Yeah.
And remembering to do it, which at the
Yeah.
right time.
Yeah, and I think, Angel, does that list has periwinkle on it, doesn't it? It may be on the back. I don't remember.
It is.
Yeah,
Evergreen, periwinkle.
yeah. And so the control time for that one is,
October through March, treatment after first frost through the dormant season is very effective.
yeah.
Temperature should be above 50 degrees Fahrenheit.
So we're kind of,
Oh, and it's in red, so it's definitely a foliar spray.
yeah. So you definitely have to spray the leaves on it, but we're approaching the not great time to spray it right now. We're just on the tail end of things. So. Other questions? Okay. Oh, so Travis said he's known as Fortune Spindler. So yeah, that again, regional names. So that could be a problem for some. Okay, our next one that we're going to talk about is our native vining and ground cover alternatives. So we have bearberry that can be used. Wild ginger is a great one to use as a native alternative. We have some sedges. Just don't use yellow nut sedge. That would not be the sedge you would want to plant. You would want to go find some native sedges. False Solomon seal. Creeping phlox, if you've got a sunny area that you don't mind for it to spread a little bit. Let's see, we've got some American bittersweet. We've got the trumpet honeysuckle. And we have Virginia creeper. I will give you warning though, it can also take over. So just fair warning on that. It also likes to mimic poison ivy, and in its younger stages has 3 leaves. So 3 leaves, let it be. That's how it survives and gets misidentified as poison ivy. It can be very aggressive though. I think I'm still, Angel and I pulled out a ton by my house because it was growing. I didn't plant it and it started growing up my house. So it had laid in the soil for quite some time and then came back. These are just a few options that you can use. Let's see here. Oh, Laura asked if grapevine is considered invasive. Not to my knowledge. So grapevine though would be one that you would have to keep in check because it would be like, it would also grow up in the trees and get too heavy and knock the trees down. So not to my knowledge, but
And you can swing on it.
right? Well, and people do utilize, I mean, it is one of the vines that you will see people utilize. They'll make wreaths out of it or walking canes and stuff, depending on the size of the vine. So at least someone's found another use for it outside of just having to chop it up and try to burn it or something else. So our invasive trees are next, once I get it to go. Okay, invasive trees. Tree of heaven, we've talked about this one before. Not fun. It grows very quickly. It's native to Asia and was planted as an ornamental. The tree has opposite compound leaves that might be mistaken for black walnut or sumac. Okay, the leaves have a foul odor, so we've talked about, some people say it's like burnt peanut butter or something like that. I don't know what burnt peanut butter smells like. I just know it has a strange smell. The bark is light gray and will turn a little darker as it ages. So the threat is that it can take over quickly. So once you even chop the main stem, it'll start to reproduce from the other roots down below.
Is that a tree of heaven tree, that big tree?
Uh-huh.
Oh, I didn't know they got that big. Does it have thorns or not?
Should not have thorns.
Okay.
If you have a tree with thorns, send me photos and I'll try to identify it.
We cut it down and,
Oh, okay.
and it's rooting, it's coming up from all the, so we just keep going over it,
Mhm.
hoping it will die eventually.
Yeah, I mean, once you take that away, the life, it'll take it a while, but yeah.
It's in my sister's yard in New Albany.
Oh, there you go. Oh, so Laura, on the back of the grapevine, they had to use a tow hitch on her husband's truck to remove one this weekend. So that had been one that was left unchecked and got a little out of control. So then,
And they're typically not considered invasive.
yeah, they just get a little out of control in the right area. There we go. Calorie repair. Yeah.
Is there a chemical control for tree of heaven?
There,
Basil, I think it was basil.
it's basil bark, and Angel, you've got the list there for me.
Yes.
Oh, good.
Basil bark and folder spray.
Yeah. And so, the chemical though starts with a G. I have to think about that. Remind me and I'll send out the link, or Angel, will you take a note and remind me to add that to the email that I send out on Friday?
Yeah, you don't want to cut through it.
Yeah, you want to spray it.
What am I reminding you of?
Chemical for tree of heaven. That'll be enough to trick the trigger to go, oh yeah, let me look at the chemical to be used. I don't know, just right.
It's glyphosate, isn't No?
There's another one. Yeah, there's something else besides glyphosate.
Glyphosate doesn't work on.
Yeah, it's not glyphosate. It starts with a G, but it's not glyphosate. I don't remember.
Garlon,
Garlon, there you go. Garlon, there you go.
which is a trade name. It's, I'm sure, some other chemical.
There's a couple, I think there's a couple of chemicals in Garlon though. Garlon, though, that's it.
Okay.
That's what you'll see. It's a G. I was getting there. It's just a little slow. All right, so calorie pears, our next one, which I'm kind of surprised we haven't started to see a few of these blooming yet, but especially when we have those really warm days. But they will start blooming ever so soon. They were introduced as an ornamental, commonly known as Bradford pear. Other cultivars include the Aristocrat, Autumn Blaze, and Cleveland Select. So it has alternate leaves that are up to 3 inches long. The leaf surfaces are shiny and leathery and have fine teeth. The bark is brown with numerous small ridges in it. Wild forms of the tree will often have thorns, so maybe that's what you had instead of if it had thorns on it. I don't know. So originally the tree was sterile due to its inability to cross with the same cultivar. This changed with the introduction of new cultivars, and this prolific seed producer can quickly take over old fields and open areas. So, yes, mowing it, not recommended. All right, Norway maple is our next one. And this is native to Northern Europe and was widely planted as an ornamental. It has opposite leaves with 5 to 7 lobes on it, has shiny green surface, and its petioles have a milky white sap. So that would distinguish it from our other maples, because our native maples don't have that sap.
What's the petiole?
Petiole is the little branch between the leaf and the branch, the stem. So it's like a little stem. It's a little pliable stem between the stem and the wood, the leaf and the wood. Does that make sense?
Next to leaf to the tree.
So it connects the leaf to the tree. Want
And
to
that's
see?
different from the stem of the leaf, or it is the stem of the
It
leaf?
is the stem of the leaf.
Okay,
Yeah, stem of the leaf and petiole,
got it.
same
I'm
thing.
not,
It's, I can go get a sample. I know where my leaf samples are. If you want me to go grab a leaf sample and be like, here's the petiole. We can do that.
any tips on identifying Norway maple from a native?
The milky sap is,
That's the one?
that's the one. And we don't have any native maples that I'm aware that have 7 lobes on it. The 5 would be the sugar maple and the silver maple. The silver maple is not really what I would consider lobed. It just has, it's more jagged on it versus the sugar that is more what I would consider a lobe. And looks similar to this. Let's see, and just like the other maples, it does have the, what we all call the helicopter. So just like you can see, these helicopters appear to be a little bit wider than what we would see on our natives. Crimson King is a common cultivar with dark red leaves for this one. There are other cultivars with green leaves, and they often revert back to green leaves when they escape their natural environment.
When you talk about cultivars, does that mean they're okay to plant or no? You don't.
This
like
one probably
invasive?
not any, this one's not anymore. These cultivars are not.
Okay.
But that's what they're, so they're saying the most common one that was sold was that Crimson King, because it had that nice red color. Again, does that mean the state's gonna come through and tell everybody, you have to cut that down? No. But they prefer, like, when it kicks the bucket, not to replace it with another Crimson King, like.
Sure.
This tree is very shade tolerant and can shade out most trees, even sugar maple. So this is a fun fact about this tree. Some native tree alternatives would be our service berries, our American hornbeam. That would also be our redbud, pagoda dogwood. We have our Washington half-thorn, our red maple, and our sugar maple are all similar in terms of shape. So now our herbaceous invasives. Okay, so these are the other plants that we might find. Would include poison hemlock. This is one that you do not want to brush up against. You will get blisters on your skin from it. Was native to Europe and was introduced as an ornamental. I don't know who thought this was a good idea as an ornamental.
All these are invasive what?
Herbaceous.
Oh, herbaceous.
Yeah, these are herbaceous. The first year it's a rosette type with a fern-like leaf. So this fern-like would be more like a rosette, so close to the ground like you would see on a dandelion. Okay.
Looks like Queen Anne's lace. So what's it? I mean, are they similar or?
Yes, they're similar, and the way to tell them apart is that this has purple spots all up and down the spine. Queen Anne's lace doesn't. This does, and this is also topping out about 8 feet tall. If you have a Queen Anne's lace that's getting 8 feet tall, we need to talk about what's happening in your soil. Because Queen Anne's does not get that tall.
How do you safely remove it?
Just spraying it, trying to catch it in that rosette stage and spraying it. Because if you try to touch it, you're gonna get the chemicals on you, the oils.
And some people have been overcome by some of the fumes and stuff
Mhm.
when they're trying to like remove large patches.
Yeah, you have to be very careful with
I
this
think
one.
I was reading like on the Boyd County Facebook page last summer that
Mhm.
some of them
Just the fumes.
started having headaches and feeling dizzy.
Yeah, this one's a very difficult plant because it does have a lot of impact on our health. And I think they even say like people with heart problems should not even try to approach it because of that. So yes, it will grow 2 to 10 feet tall and flower with clusters of white flowers in an umbrella shape. Has purple spots on the stems. And it flowers June to July and produces seeds by August and September. So if someone doesn't know what they have and they mow it, that really helps spread the seeds. It is toxic to humans and animals. It's found in pastures, roadsides, and ditches. Can be controlled with physical removal. The sap is harmful to the skin. Just like we said, it does cause us blisters. So we don't want this one around. Purple loosestrife is our next one. Often found in wetlands and ditches. It was introduced for use in landscaping and for bees and was inadvertently spread from the ballast water of ships. So that happens. And it escaped into the wetlands and quickly crowded out our native vegetation. It has hairy opposite leaves and a spike of small purple flowers. The plant can produce many seeds, and it's often found again in the drainage ditches, wetlands, and shores of lakes and ponds. To control it, a single plant can be hand pulled. If you have more than a single plant, we're looking at a herbicide that is meant to be used around waterways. So there are aquatically produced chemicals, like there's different forms of Roundup that are meant to be used in areas with water and stuff that won't harm wildlife.
And I think I read recently that all loosestrife, all of the lip brown is invasive. Is that correct?
Have not heard that, but I'm not saying that that's probably not a true statement because if purple loosestrife has that capability, then I would say most of the others do as well.
I got a really frequent at Udell a couple of years ago. That was a firecracker. It has dark leaves and yellow blooms. And within just a few months, one plant was,
Oops.
this had taken over this much.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, I don't know what you are, but you need to go.
Don't you, wouldn't you hate to be the person that like said, oh, this is a great plant, you should buy this?
No, I'm looking at, I happen to be pulling this one up and it does say that all forms of this, not just the purple loosestrife, but lycum are.
There you go. Yeah.
Not to be sold.
Yeah.
How tall does this get?
It's pretty tall.
It can get relatively tall. I would say in the 5 to 6 foot range, depending on the area.
Wow.
Yeah. So,
Well, look how tall it is with that man.
Yeah,
standing
man.
yeah, so this one, this is in the Oregon Department of Agriculture. So, you know, it's growing in this particular climate, it's growing above his head.
Is Queen Anne's lace invasive? Or, I mean, all of a sudden, we have tons of it.
No, it's white snake root.
Oh, never mind. What-
Which the white snake root is native, but you have to be careful because it is poisonous to animals.
Oh.
Yes.
Abraham Lincoln's mother.
Yeah, so the story is that the cow ate the white snake root. And then she drank the milk from the cow and the poison was in the milk.
So what would you do if you have a lot of it?
You can keep, as long as you're not running livestock, it's fine. People are running livestock that they have to control that native plant. So again, it's not that natives are good plants, but they also need to be kept in certain areas. So if we're using an area for for livestock, then we need to control it. But if we're just doing like a pollinator area, then it's okay. Just make sure that no one tries to consume it. Because it is poisonous. Okay. Our next one is common reed. This is another one. It's found in wet areas, ditches, and ponds. creates very dense thickets. It's a perennial grass that's native to Europe and Asia. The native variety of this plant, there is a native variety of this plant that does not become invasive. Okay, but they don't tell me what the native variety is. They just say that it's not, but there is one that's not. So it has bluish green leaves. The growth from the previous year often persists into the next year. It has large fluffy seed head and can spread by seeds and also above ground stolons and underground rhizomes. This one's a three-way spreader: seeds, stolons, and rhizomes. Okay. The dense growth excludes other species and reduces wildlife habitat and recreation. So think about if it's growing near waterways, can't get your boats or your kayaks and stuff through it. And it can affect drainage. Okay, reed canary grass. This is our next one. Grows 3 to 6 feet tall. It's a cool season grass that was introduced as a forage species, meaning that it was introduced for livestock to feed on, and it grows well in the wet areas. It is a large coarse grass that has hairless stems. The leaf blades are flat and have a rough surface. It has seed heads that turn tan at maturity. Okay, and it can choke out native wetland species. Think about if it's growing 6 feet tall, it's really crowding out and shading out the growing space for those natives. The next one, Japanese knotweed. Okay, we do have this one in Floyd County. Was brought from Asia in the 1800s for ornamental purposes, so it's been hanging around for a while. Most often found in wet areas, roadsides, and ditches, and it grows 3 to 10 feet each year.
Wow.
Yeah. It has an intensive network of rhizomes and will spread, so it is spreading underground through those rhizomes. It has simple alternate leaves that grow up to 6 inches long and 5 inches wide, and the stems are hollow with small white flowers. So this would be one that if you were unsure, if you broke it and it had that hollow stem, that would be a key identifying feature.
Would this be like a woody stem or like more of a?
It's a herbaceous, so it's gonna be more pliable. It's not gonna be woody. It'll just be a nice green stem.
And it can be 10 feet tall.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Last I knew there was some of this down by the river, by the waterfront. So. Our next one, garlic mustard. Silly garlic mustard, man. So it's a biennial. That means it takes 2 years to get to full maturity. It's commonly seen in the shade of the forest understory, so it likes those shady areas. First year is that rosette, so think of like a dandelion in that rosette shape. The leaves are round with scalloped edges, and it smells like garlic or onion when crushed. In the second year, it grows a tall stalk, sets flower, and goes to seed. Each plant produces a large number of seeds. If you can imagine, they have all these tiny little white flowers, and they're all making seeds. They will quickly overtake forest. And it produces antifungal compounds that harm beneficial mycorrhizae. So it actually does a lot of damage by killing off some of that mycorrhizae in the soil.
There was a lot of it a couple of years ago at Mount St. Francis. I don't know how they got rid of it or if they have succeeded in getting rid of it. But
He's still, as far as I know, still battling it. Every day, Tim's got a new plant he's tackling, I feel like.
I feel like everything we've touched on up here, pretty much we've almost seen out of Mount St. Francis.
Yeah, because we've done a few and we're like, oh, there's that one. Oh, there's that one. Well, there you go. So it just depends on where you're at the mount as to what you're seeing.
Is the springtime when these first start to come up, like they're pretty visible? Is that when you want to be doing mechanical removal?
Yeah.
Because they die completely back, right? Like they
Yes.
come from seed.
Yep. So the first year is that rosette. So that's usually people miss it the first year because they're not looking for the rosette. And the second year that they see it, and they don't see it till it starts to flower. So depending on when you're seeing it in the flowering stage, you may already be too late and maybe half the flowers have already been pollinated and gone to seed.
Yeah, it's real discouraging when you try to pull it and you think you're getting it and then all these seeds fly out.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So the rosette, say that again. What are we looking at here?
So this is kind of as it's growing, but you would see a small rosette of this on the ground. So a small circle of that where this plant's growing. And then the second year, this is second year growth
Oh,
here.
okay, a rosette of those leaves.
Yes,
Okay, not a rosette of a flower or something like that.
yeah, just a little rosette of leaves.
Does it grow much that first year then?
Nope,
It just
it's
stays
just doing the
small?
leaves.
Okay.
And it's just doing those small ones.
Just those leaves that are down on the ground.
Yep.
basically, Without the long stem.
Yep, and then this is second year. So first year is just the leaves as the rosette. Second year is shooting up that stalk with the same leaf shapes and setting flower and going to seed.
And the soil needs to be really soft.
Oh, man.
Yep,
Because it'll, the roots will break off.
Yep.
easily.
and so if you're not seeing it though till it flowers, then you do run that risk of part of it's already been pollinated and set seed.
Is this the one that the seeds are like, I feel like they're almost like spring loaded or something, like when you walk by, then they like pop off?
No,
No, Star of Bethlehem, like that.
Or touching on.
Star of Bethlehem, but then there's also,
Yeah, I know that one. I know.
jewelweed and then, oh shoot, your violets and stuff, like your impatiens. You touch your impatiens, they'll spew out too.
Is pulling it mechanically, is that the best control or?
Yeah, if you can, especially if you don't see it during that rosette stage.
Uh-huh.
But if you can find the rosettes and spray the rosettes, and that gives you a better shot of helping keep it under control. Yeah, there's a place I used to work, I think one day we took out like 30 to 40 trash bags of it, like the big garbage bags that we would just try. So then we're gonna move on to some invasive insects here. Okay, so can be hard to control and eradicate, because sometimes we don't see them till they're too late, right? Think about that graph that we had. Mechanical control would be exclusion and removal. We would also have chemical control, biological control. But as we talked about, that may be difficult if the biological control isn't native to the US. And using conservation, looking at importation of things as well, those types of things can help control it. So the first one, brown marmorated stink bug.
I've already seen one.
They've been in our building.
I
Oh,
think I
they're
found
all over
one.
the place.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
they've been
I've got
on
one
the
here.
radio.
Verifying.
Yeah, yeah. So for these to identify them, we're looking, you can kind of see in the photo, there's these white stripes on the antenna. That would be how you would look for it. Its native range is China, Japan, and Korea. It was first identified in Allentown, Pennsylvania in 2001, but they think it had been introduced accidentally in the late 1990s. So again, one that was hanging around for a while before it was ever spotted. It's found in 44 states and 4 Canadian provinces as of 2019. So
So you said it was identified in the 2000s.
2001, but they believe it was accidentally introduced in the late 90s.
But there's another type of stink bug, right?
So we have native stink bugs.
Okay.
This is the invasive one.
Right.
Sorry.
Because I swear, I'm,
You knew about them before 1995 or
well, that's
something.
what I was thinking. I'm like, we had them all around as when I was a kid, but I'm like, now suddenly they're like,
In your house.
oh, they're all over my porch. You can't walk outside without being inundated by them. And I'm like, you were never this bad.
That's because those are the invasive
Right,
ones.
that totally makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, your native ones are usually green and there is a brown one. So, but we're looking at the brown
Yeah,
ones.
you would only see a couple,
Yep,
you know, that
yeah,
totally makes sense to me. now. Thank you.
uh-huh. Yeah, and don't squish them because they do stink.
Oh.
So
Mhm.
they do stink indeed. And,
Apparently my dog likes them. He chases them. He tries
oh,
to like eat them or roll on them. Ugh.
he should probably rethink that move. That's just not a good move. So the hosts for this are grapes and a wide range of orchard crops. So a lot of our fruit production, we would see this in. Small fruits and vegetables is also where we find them. They will eat your tomatoes and everything else. They like vegetables. So the feeding damage includes pitting and scarring of fruit, shriveling of grain and seed, and it's called staying green effects on soybeans. So the soybeans don't turn, they stay green. Although few insecticides are currently labeled for use against brown marmorated stink bug, farmers use pesticides labeled for native stink bugs. A number of introduced biological control agents are being evaluated and introduced or for introduction. But in the meantime, the samurai wasp, an adventurous arrival, which it showed up on its own, also from Asia, where the wasp destroys 60 to 90% of the egg population of the brown marmorated stink bug. So this wasp took a little travel, probably didn't have a passport, came on over and is now apparently followed the brown marmorated stink bug here. Okay.
So the wasp will be the next invasive species.
You never know. It said that they discovered it attacking the marmorated stink bug in several states, both in the west and east coast. So apparently did enough control in Asia that it was like, go for a trip. Why not see the world? And it came on over. So as long as it doesn't start affecting our natives and attacking the natives, then maybe it'll be okay. Maybe it'll just move back. The next one is the gypsy moth, which I do have to clarify. As of last night, this slide is now out of date. It is no longer the gypsy moth. It is the spongy moth.
Spongy?
Spongy moth.
Were gypsies offended?
Yes,
Okay.
that is it. That was a culture in Greece or what, there was a whole article on CNN about it. So it has now been switched to the spongy moth. It is native range as Europe and Asia. And the adults were imported from Europe in 1869 to help develop a silkworm industry. Oops.
Good move.
Yep, didn't go well. A few years later, they escaped from captivity in Medford, Massachusetts, with the first major outbreak recorded in 1889. So they've been hanging around for a while, all because we wanted more silk. Yeah.
20 years or 30 years.
Are they the ones that put those webs in the tree or not? Is that something else?
There's other ones that do webs in trees. There's tent caterpillars and webworms and yeah, there's a lot of different things. So they're found throughout the Northeast, down to North Carolina, west to Minnesota, South Dakota, Illinois, and Kansas right now. The larvae prefer oak trees, but may feed on many species of trees, shrubs, hardwoods, and conifers. So here's the issue. They like oak trees. Oak trees are one of our best pollinator food supplies. That's where they host the most moths at. So can't exactly get rid of the oak trees to get rid of the gypsy moth because then we get rid of all of our pollinator population. The larvae chew on leaves and can defoliate a plant at high densities. Impact depends on the amount of foliage affected, the health of the tree, and the number of consecutive defoliations. So if the tree is defoliated for 1 year and 1 year only, no big deal. The tree can overcome that. Multiple years in a row, the tree will struggle to overcome that and eventually succumb to death. Control current management. Recommendations are to let established populations be controlled by the exotic fungus. So there's a specific fungus that attacks them. And pesticides are available, but most states managing new infestations use a combination of mating pheromones and microbial agents, which include viruses and bacteria, to eradicate populations.
The mating pheromones will like attract the adults into a trap or something.
Yes, yeah. So they set up traps for them.
Do our birds eat them at all?
It doesn't say that the birds eat them.
Okay, I was just curious.
So I would think the birds would more likely go after native caterpillars.
Sure.
Especially with this one having some red on it. That's the warning sign, don't eat me. So, you know. All right, our next favorite one, Japanese beetles. Oh yeah, so native range obviously is Japan. First identified in Riverton, New Jersey in 1916. They were believed to have been introduced on a shipment of iris bulbs in 1912. So the Irish bulbs came over and so did the Japanese beetle. They're found in most states east of the Mississippi, the states just west of the Mississippi and a partial infestation in states west of these states and Colorado. So let's just say they're pretty much up to the Rockies. That would have been the better statement there. They're pretty much up to the Rockies. They feed on the roots, the larvae feed on the roots of many grasses, and then the adults feed on a wide range of host plants, including fruit, garden, and field crops, along with turf, landscape, and ornamental plants. As we know, there isn't too many things a Japanese beetle doesn't like to eat.
You can always tell by the way they strip the leaves, but they leave the veins.
Yep, they skeletonize the leaves. And this would definitely be one I would not put a pheromone trap out for unless you had a neighbor that you didn't like and you gifted them the pheromone trap, because it'll bring every beetle to your house. So do not put pheromone traps out.
So I'll take your advice, but I'm just curious, like, are pheromone traps, do they make any difference? Assuming they, you kill lots of beetles, right? Is that good on the whole?
You're probably catching them after they've already laid their eggs. So you're killing them after the fact instead of controlling the population ahead of time. Yeah. But I mean, if you have chickens, it's a great way. I know people that set up the traps in such a way that the beetles fall back into the chicken pen and then the chickens eat them.
I used to feed them to my fish in the pond.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. So you can can corral the Japanese beetles to a certain area and then let Mother Nature take its course. That would work too. Let's see here. Yep. So Travis put in there the Japanese beetles, that moles and voles do like them, which they do. But we also suggest when we're talking about moles and voles to work on the nutrition of your yard instead of just attacking the grubs, because there are other grubs in your yard besides the Japanese beetles that are for native plants. So we're looking at making sure we have a good pH and nutrient level in our yards to keep the moles and voles at bay. That's usually what we're trying to do. Okay. So let's see here. Anything else?
I want to hear more about that.
What?
Improving the soil to keep the moles and moles.
So our recommendations are usually just to test your soils and keep those soils healthy to help reduce the populations of other things.
So what would be a deficiency that?
It's just keeping the pH in check and stuff, and the nutrients. It's just keeping them at a normal level for a yard.
Are you talking about soil that is lawn in particular, or whatever?
Whatever you're trying to control, or to grow. So like if you're growing blueberries, just making sure that soil stays healthy for the blueberries will keep it going. Or if you're doing just grass, making sure that your pH is in the right range for grass so that your nutrients stay in check.
The moles like the grubs. I mean, if you have a lot of grubs, whether they're Japanese beetle or whatever,
But the thought process is if your soil is healthy, you won't have as many grubs in that area because they're doing something that's deficient. So if they're attacking the grass, then it's probably something that's deficient with the grass that they feel they can easily target it. So if we're keeping that stuff healthy, then now is that always true? Because the answer is no, because as we know, insects, animals, whatever, don't read the labels in the books that we all read that say, oh, this is how it's supposed to happen. It doesn't. Just like the deer don't read the signs that say deer crossing, they don't cross there all the time. They cross wherever they please, and then we accidentally hit them. So our next one is spotted winged Drosophila. Okay, so this one again, native to Asia. It is a fruit fly, and it can also be found in Korea and China. It was first seen in Hawaii in the 1980s and found in the mainland US in Central California in 2008. We do have this insect here. It is distributed on the East Coast of the states, just west of the Mississippi, and the Pacific Coast states and Utah. And it likes the thin-skinned fruit. So think about like raspberries, anything that's got a really thin skin on it, because what happens is the female comes and she sticks her ovipositor in that fruit and lays her egg. So you will probably never even notice that it's got spotted wing Drosophila until you go to eat the fruit. And these little larvae are crawling out. It's fine. It's extra protein. It's fine. We had this conversation in class, didn't we, Veronica? It's
Oh, yeah.
fine.
Extra protein.
It's extra protein. It's fine. Yeah. So the infested fruit does turn brown. So if you don't pick it in time, you will see that the fruit does turn brown. Which also then promotes a secondary infection by fungi and bacteria. The control management include planting resistant plants, exclusion, sanitation, and cultural practices. And you can use pesticides, but if you can't see the insect, then you can't exactly spray the insect. So we can't just be using pesticides free will and hoping for the best. We have to know that we have the insect there first. And this is another one that they're like, oh, why don't you all put up some pheromone traps? I'm like, no, thanks. If I have it, but I'm sure as heck not gonna keep inviting them to my place to hang out on my fruit.
Can people put pheromone traps, like, could you put them on the roof of this building or something where it wouldn't really matter, like, it's just not,
You could, I don't know if they would go that high.
that's too far.
Yeah, I don't know, like, because usually you hang them in like trees or somewhere where they would typically be flying at anyway, at a level that they would be flying at.
So it's not like we can't like put pheromone traps in the Walmart parking lot or something and they just
Right.
go there to die
Right, yeah, because you have to put them somewhere close to,
where they already are.
yeah, where they're already
What's
at.
close to, like 20 feet or something?
No, they've done it several yards away, like hundreds of, like within the same orchard, but maybe farther down. But I definitely couldn't be like, put him in the Walmart parking lot and hoping that it
It's
helps
not gonna
tubers
clear
out.
the whole of Floyd County or something.
Yeah. So there is a proximity location. And I don't even know that they tried them, but obviously you don't see a lot of pheromone traps in the market for them to control, because at the end of the day, if you're picking the fruit regularly, you're probably gonna pick it before you see it start to brown, and you're just gonna consume the larvae anyway, usually without knowing it. Usually if you leave the fruit set out where it's warm, that's when you start to see the movement, versus if you put it in the fridge and stuff and chill them. So might have had it happen a couple times and just threw them in the fridge and said, oh, well, it's fine. So it's right, it's fine, it's fine. Our next one is the Asian lady beetle. Hooray, another nuisance that we all enjoy so much in the winter, right? As the name suggests, it is from Eastern Asia, and it was, let's see, first observed in Hawaii in 1916. So now these last couple have been hanging out in Hawaii first. They took a nice little tropical vacation.
Are people ordering them? It
Um,
seems like I remember seeing something in the newspaper, something about lady,
so you can order ladybugs or lady beetles to put in your garden, but they're not going to stay unless you have aphids and other things to keep them fed. So you're not ordering these, you're ordering the natives
okay.
that are red. Then they were, after 1916, they were discovered in the wild near New Orleans in 1988. So
They bite.
they do bite.
They do? Oh.
They can bite, yeah. They're found throughout the continental US except for, want to take a guess which state doesn't have them?
Alaska.
Nope, Wyoming.
Oh.
Continental US, Wyoming doesn't have them. Yeah, who knew?
They're in denial.
Well, but think about how barren Wyoming is. Maybe it's just they're there, but they're not in a largely populated area where people are noticing them.
That's it. I
Yeah,
know what a largely populated area is,
yeah,
Wyoming.
yeah. So they have a variety of insects that they like to eat, including aphids, mites, thrips, scales, and lepidopterids, meaning that they like to eat the eggs of butterflies and moths. Because of their native host range, they threaten native species diversity and can impart a disagreeable taste when collected on grapes. So if you're harvesting grapes and you're not watching for them and they get in with your grapes, you consume them, they could give you a really bad taste. Yeah, not one that I would really think about. So again, if we see them a lot of homes, to prevent them from coming in, we would want to make sure we're sealing up any cracks around doors and windows to keep them out, because they're looking for somewhere warm to hang out in. They like a nice toasty house in the winter. And once inside the structure, beetles can be trapped using a light source and or vacuuming. So if you're feeling kind of aggressive, you can grab that vacuum and just suck them up. All right, so things that we're going to be on the lookout for. So the next couple of slides are things that we're going to be watching for, and they include, if my computer goes, Asian longhorn beetles. So these are the new up and coming thing that we are looking for. There's been several webinars in the last couple of years about these. They are native to Asia, primarily China and Korea. They were first discovered in Brooklyn, New York in 1996 and are currently found in New York, New Jersey, Massachusetts, Illinois, Ohio, and Ontario. So they're kind of sporadic in their distribution. They primarily live on maple, poplar, willow, and elm. So that's a big chunk of our native trees right there. The larvae feed on damage the wood, and at high populations, they can kill trees by girdling them, which means they're chewing through that cambium layer and the tree is dying. To control them, avoid introduction and subsequent infestations by monitoring areas vulnerable to infestations. Okay, if introduced, a local population can be eradicated by identifying and then removing all infested or suspected host materials. So if you have a small infestation, the only way to get rid of it would be to remove all the host plants.
What is that Asian longhorn beetle tree of heaven? Does that mean that they prefer that?
Yes, yes. So that they do like the tree of heaven. So if we can help eradicate tree of heaven, then we can help reduce some of their habitat.
I'm confused. We're looking at a couple different bugs here, right?
We are, and I'm getting ready to get the second one.
Oh, okay. And we were talking about the one on the upper right, correct?
Yes, Asian longhorn beetle. Black one, sorry, I forgot there were two on this one. Asian longhorn beetle, little black beetle. Next one is spotted lanternfly. Well, let me check the chat real quick. Oh yeah. So Travis said he may have eaten a couple of the Asian lady beetles and they did not taste pleasant. So the second one is the spotted lanternfly. And its native range is China, Bangladesh, Vietnam, and Eastern Asia. So that is the one with the red on the wings here. Would also be the in the bottom picture. So it is found in Pennsylvania, Delaware, New Jersey, New York, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Virginia, West Virginia, and North Carolina. Again, still pretty sporadic, but we are watching for populations here.
I thought it had been found in Indiana.
There's been one
report
that I know of, and it was in Switzerland County, so over by Ohio. Other states are doing more with, not that we're not doing enough, but like I watched about some farmers out of Pennsylvania. They actually went to their university, they went to Penn State, got trained on how to spot it and spot the eggs so they could go through on their own farm and start eradicating the populations to try to control it. That was just something that they talked about in one of their videos, like, yeah, we went and now we're certified to go and work on identifying the eggs and controlling that population on our farm.
On their farm, like on their crops?
Yeah, so they grow vegetables and stuff and grapes, so they could see it more readily on some, like on their fence posts and things like that. They were showing how they spotted it. But that was how Pennsylvania was addressing it, was asking people to come in that own property and farms, because they were that was their best defense, was to train those people to go out and eradicate it. So the hosts for the spotted lanternfly include maple, poplar, willow, and elm, but also fruit trees, ornamentals. They do like tree of heaven, and there are some vines that they like. So again, a good variety of plants. Feeding damage can cause oozing sap, leaf wilting and curling, and tree dieback, if I finish that sentence correctly. So if they feed on it enough, you'll start to see dieback on the tree itself.
For these, is it the larvae or the adults that are eating?
So if the adults are these moths, they're not consuming, they're like just sucking up sap and stuff, it would be the larvae.
That are doing the damage?
Yeah. Because these are flying insects and they don't have chewing mouth
So
parts.
how are the larvae identified, or are they in the tree? Or what?
Well, and it would be nice if they had a photo of the larvae here, but they
I think they're
don't.
Under the bark, I mean, you can see the little holes around.
Yeah, let's
The
see.
tree. That's
Uh,
all, so.
Let me see if I can find a photo. Images here. So all of the, oh, here we go. So it looks like they start out as a little beetle with spots on it. It's kind of what they look like. Yeah, it's like a little black beetle with spots on it, almost like that, but more round.
That's the larval stage, or is it the,
Instar,
okay,
the instar stage. And then like by July, they turn from a black to a red. And then they'll change into this stage. So they go through essentially 5 changes. Yeah. And they lay their eggs in masses. So that's what you're looking for, is the egg masses. Okay.
Are the egg masses then on the bars or?
Yes.
On the bar?
Uh-huh.
Under, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, under.
So they might be, it depends again on the tree,
This
so,
picture makes it look like it's just like a scaly
yeah,
patch on the tree.
yeah. So like that's, the farmers are watching, it was like on their clothesline, that they could see it on their clothesline. Cause it was a wooden pole, kind of like a tree. So, you can use neem oil, to try to, get at these pests as well. The next one we're talking about is thousand canker disease. Okay, and this was first seen out west in black walnuts. It's a complex kind of system between the beetle, a beetle and a fungus. They work together to weaken the tree. Both have been found in Indiana, but it does not appear that they will have a large problem in the eastern US. So this beetle and fungus work together and attack the black walnuts. Next one, sun milk death. So was first found in California, and it was found in Indiana nursery stock in 2019. Okay. It does affect oaks and other species. It's common in rhododendrons, azaleas, and viburnums. Okay. And it has these species have foliar symptoms. If it spreads to red oaks, they will have oozing sap and red-brown cankers on their trunk. So their trunk will start to have these cankers appear. Sanitation and prevention of introduction is the best protection. So the sanitation would be if you're trimming on something that you think is infected, disinfecting your pruning tools before you move on to the next plant.
What do you mean that it's common on rhododendrons, azaleas, and viburnums? Do you mean those carry it?
But yeah, you can find it on rhododendrons, azaleas, and viburnums.
Does it affect those plants?
Yes, as it looks more like a leaf issue than it does anything else. So you wouldn't necessarily see like the oozing sap
Oh,
like you would on
okay.
the trees.
What's your experience as far as how common it is just in general landscapes, not in nurseries? But just what have you
I
seen?
haven't had a lot of calls. I mean, there's been some suspect of some trees dying from it. But without it being tested,
Yeah.
then you don't know if it was that or if it was just the tree was old
Right.
and was done.
And when they say nursery stock, are they talking about like big box stores or otherwise responsible nurseries?
So it could have been a big box store. It could have been just a regular nursery, like a Grant Line or something like that. That's why we have DNR specialists that go out and check nursery stock to make sure that they're not seeing any diseases and stuff or insects.
But it seems capable of killing big trees too, like
Yes.
this picture.
It can, yeah. It can, so I haven't heard of a ton of reports though, but again, this would be one that I would send a sample off to Purdue and say, hey, can we identify it just to clarify? Because they would also want to know at Purdue's level, so we can start tracking and going, oh, okay, well, now we know it's in Floyd and Clark counties and we expect it to spread, exponentially this way or what have you.
Are some oak species more susceptible?
This one, it says red oak, so it looks like the red oaks are the most susceptible. Okay. The next one is boxwood blight. I know lots of people like their boxwoods. It's a fungal disease of the boxwoods. And it was first reported in the United Kingdom in the 1990s. So it has been around for a while and it has spread to many parts of the world. It causes spots on the leaves, will also cause defoliation and cankers on the stem. So if you're looking at the stem, it'll start to have these growths or openings on the stem that look like cankers. Repeated defoliation can cause plant death. So just like when we talked about earlier, the bug keeps eating the leaves year after year. It just keeps affecting the boxwood year after year. It will eventually die. The fungal spores are spread by water splash. So if you're spraying your plants from the top because you're giving them a drink of water, don't do that because you're helping spread the spores. You can't control the way it makes it, but you can control how you water it. Always water at the base. Clean up any leaf debris and get rid of it. And that will also help control the fungus. And you can use some fungicides to help protect the plant. Here are some other resources. I will leave this up there in case you want to see. So that's our reported invasives at Purdue, some ornamental species. We've seen these in the other slides as well. What I printed for you tonight is the spray guide. So from the SICM, it is the spray guide for the different invasives. And then I also printed out the brochure for our local SISMA chapter, which is the Floyd County Native Habitat Restoration Team. I would tell you that we're having a meeting this month, but I think Kayla and I just switched it to April. But Kayla's a great resource for looking at invasives on your property and stuff and helping come up with a management plan. So, and then the only final thing I have to tell you is if you're going to use a pesticide, herbicide, or other chemical, to read the label and follow all instructions. That's all we ask about or tell you about. So,
Is there an organization in Clark that's doing the same?
yep, CHIRP. It's called CHIRP. I don't know what CHIRP stands for anymore, but
Just CHIRP.
yep.
Send one copy of, the sprayer.
Okay, I can print Isla one. No big deal.
You tell me more about our system.
So,
Go back one slide.
yeah, sure can. That one?
Yes.
Can do. And I will send this out. Yes, sir.
You may have covered this earlier in some of the other talks, but when you're looking at plants that are invasive species, who makes the determination what an invasive species is? And if it is an invasive species, are there nurseries and seed catalog people still allowed to sell it?
So the government is who's making the call on invasiveness, whether that's
Government.
the government. So it could be the federal government, because there is a federal noxious weed list. And each state would then pick its own invasive. So what they've been tracking and having reports of getting out of control. So Indiana has a terrestrial plant rule, which is a list of 44 species that cannot be bought, sold, bartered, gifted, or traded in the state of Indiana. Now, does that mean that you don't see it in the seed catalogs? No. Should that mean that they cannot sell it to you? Yes. But if you go looking at those catalogs, you will not always see Indiana listed. So that's why it's up to you kind of as a homeowner to double check to make sure it's still okay in the state. That's where these classes come in because not everyone realizes that we have an issue with plants going out of control.
Yeah, for some of the species that you had listed in the plants, are those considered invasive species by the government?
By Indiana.
Because
So,
some of them you can go to Walnut Ridge and they have for sale today.
right, and that would be something like a calorie pear, which is not on the terrestrial plant rule yet because of the financial implications. Had they put it on the list in 2020, it would have taken, the horticulture industry would have taken a multi-million-dollar hit. And the idea behind the list, although it was meant to have good implications, was also not meant to financially destroy anyone either. So there's like a 5-year grace period to sell all the calorie pears and no more are allowed to be brought into the state of Indiana.
So eventually it will phase out.
It will phase out eventually, yes, but the original idea,
Something like periwinkle, you shouldn't be able to go buy that now.
correct. Now, does that mean that I don't still see it on the store shelves? Yep, but that's also not I'm not a regulatory agency. That's something you have to take up with the DNR as to
Is
why.
there a regulatory agency that would stop them from doing that?
Department of Natural Resources. Angel and I are not the regulatory agencies. We are just the people giving the education.
Right.
Yeah.
Understand.
We,
Okay, thank you.
yeah, we have no say on what people can sell. Let's see here. Make sure I'm not missing anything in the chat. Leave that up. What other kinds of questions?
Well, I want to share something that I found confusing that might be
Okay.
helpful to other people. When you're looking for these chemicals and you go to Rural King, there's the gardening chemicals area. No good. Expensive, lots of stuff that doesn't help you. There's the farming chemicals area that's completely separate. And that's where you get all the, it's like in bulk, 1/10 of the price, and it has all of the good stuff. So even the employees there were confused. They were like, why can't I find this thing that's on your phone? And you got to go to the whole other section. So
Well, that's just the same as getting pool equipment versus getting camping equipment and getting inflatables that way. Like it's also more durable and it's more cheap. But that's because it's in the camping equipment section.
Yeah, so sometimes you just have to go and do a little price research first, see what you can get. What other kinds of questions do you all have? Okay. If not, you have 10 minutes back, and on Wednesday night, we will talk about native plants. And there'll be there'll be handouts for the native plant section of native alternatives and stuff. So what we talked about tonight, we'll delve into a little deeper on Wednesday. You'll have no other questions. You are free to go.